Here's your local mall. Now, private equity wants you to believe that Red Lobster went bankrupt because of their endless shrimp. They want you to believe that Toys R Us went bankrupt because families quit buying toys in person. They want you to believe that Claire's went bankrupt because teens stopped shopping at the mall. You deserve the truth. All of these companies are victims of a private equity takeover. And it's the same story every time. Private equity marches in, a few wealthy investors buy the outfit, strip out the assets, load the company up with debt, and suck the money out of it until it collapses. And then, after thousands and thousands of workers have been laid off, after pensions have been raided, after stores have closed, those private equity firms walk away with their pockets stuffed with cash. And there goes your local mall and all the stores you grew up with. Don't believe me? Just look at the numbers. Companies bought by private equity firms are 10 times more likely to go bankrupt than those that aren't. Or look at the profits of the companies before and after private equity's takeover. Toys R Us wasn't failing. It was actually doing just fine. And make no mistake, these companies aren't managed into the ground by accident. For most of them, that was the plan all along. Private equity bought Toys R Us back in 2005. And at the time, the company had over $11 billion in revenue. You know, it sounds like it was doing pretty well. But private equity borrowed money to buy the company, loaded it up with debt that Toys R Us was now responsible for paying. At the same time, Toys R Us was also now responsible for paying its PE overlords regular management fees. Over 13 years, Toys R Us ended up shelling out $464 million, nearly $500 million, to the private equity companies. And for what? For their being the owners. And did that $500 million go toward workers' wages or modernizing Toys R Us to sell toys online? Nope. In fact, the private equity company fired thousands of Toys R Us workers, stopped regular maintenance at its stores, and ultimately fell behind in the modernization. It ran the company downhill and made nearly $500 million in the process. As for Toys R Us, now it was burdened by all of this debt, and we know how that story ends. Toys R Us had to declare bankruptcy. Despite the destruction they caused, executives whined and cried that Amazon was to blame. But Brandon Ballou, in his book, Plunder, points out some context here that can't be overlooked. At the time, toys sales remained steady, even during the Great Recession and in the year before it filed for bankruptcy. What really sank the company was the burden of payments Toys R Us had to make to private equity. And here's the worst part, what came next. The PE company made out like bandits. The Toys R Us CEO, a friend of the private equity company, got a nice salary and then took a $2.8 million bonus. Oh, and the workers who lost their jobs and their retirement plans, they were given severance packages amounting to $60 per person. 60. I'll say that again. Nearly $500 million to private equity, a $2.8 million bonus for the CEO, and $60 for each worker who is now out of a job. Let me read you just one excerpt from Plunder. At the end of the bankruptcy process, Mary Osmond, a former Toys R Us employee in Boardman, Ohio, told activists that, quote, "I can't find another job at my age. No one will hire me. I dedicated my life to Toys R Us, and today I'm left with nothing." It's disgusting, and it happens over and over. This is the big-time PE playbook. Washington has done very little to rein in these firms or to ensure that their incentives align with the best interests of our economy. And as a result, Private equity firms, they can use all sorts of tricks to get rich, even if the companies they buy fail. And that's what happened with Friendly's, with Brookstone, with Petco, with David's Bridal, and with Joann's. Look, I call this legalized looting, and it's why I have a bill to make this illegal. The bill is called Stop Wall Street Looting Act, and it's about time we get this done before there are no malls left.